last good car chase movie before CG removed the weight and consequence.
Well said.
Yes.
All right. So I just want to say a couple of things about this to start out with, which is this is one of my all-time favorite movies. Like, this is very, very high.
I knew that. That's why I picked it.
Very high on my list of movies that I love. I saw this in the theater when it came out with my parents, who also both loved this movie. I was 15 when this movie came out, and it had a big impact on me. A couple of years later, when I got a DVD player, this was one of the first 5 things I ever bought on DVD. Just because I appreciated so much about how this movie was made. Then, of course, you get a bit older and you go, oh, what else did the director of this make? Oh, right. He made the fucking Manchurian Candidate.
And the French Connection.
Black Sunday.
He made Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And this man knows how to shoot France and cars.
Seconds.
Like,
and seconds.
He knows how to shoot France and cars better than almost any American I've ever seen. Like, and he used
his BMW movie. Very, very good.
Maybe
his BMW film.
Go there a lot. I never want to go to France.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where also he had all of the like miniaturization of cameras and some special effects and really good stunt acting and stuff like that all comes together in this movie, and got a decent budget for it, and got David Mamet to show up and do uncredited script rewrites. So
that's the way that came out in front for me. It felt like a David Mamet movie. I felt like a David Mamet double feature we did. It felt
actually like, who is the David Mamet clone that ended up?
I know, it's like there's a MacGuffin and there's
David Mamet.
It was actually even David Mamet, yeah.
A ragtag group of like former professionals getting together to do something, and
they
never say what they're actually going after. It's just really nuts.
So
it's
my ex
car chases.
My ex hates this movie because she cannot deal with films that leave this kind of MacGuffin open the way that this one does.
MacGuffin.
In the same way that she really hated watching The West Wing because she didn't like how they wouldn't explain what was happening up front, and you had to kind of infer it from what happens as you go through the rest of the good Sorkin writing, where like he doesn't hold you by the hand until the very, very end, and then you're like, okay, here's what happened, but I love this movie so much. Like, there's some real dumb shit in it, like what's right behind Chris, where that car just falls off the front.
Oh, it's great though, because it's a wonderful random thing. It's also it's a C-Train, right?
No, that's a Mercedes.
Mercedes, but
the Citroen is this.
Oh, the car
on the thing that fell off.
There are so many French cars in this movie. There's Citroens, there's Peugeots, there's
Citroen versus BMW. Who's gonna win? I had no idea that they could be that close.
Peugeots could go this fast.
But
there's a couple of Vauxhalls. There's a Vauxhall truck which you never see. Like, but then also it has random exploding cars too.
I read it wrecked 80 cars for this film. 80.
Oh, that seems low.
And
low to me.
I think is right after I finished watching this, I spooled up the chase scene in French Connection, and I kind of weighed them together, and I realized that this Ronin was probably the best European car chase I have ever seen.
Oh, top to bottom.
But it even seemed even better than the Italian Job. But that was a good car chase.
And there's two of the best chase scenes ever in this movie.
Yeah, they're really
almost
really
back to back.
But the thing in Paris with the narrow streets, that's fucking suicidal, man. It was just nuts.
And how many years after Princess Di got taken out in that tunnel did they have that tunnel chase scene?
It wasn't the same tunnel, was it?
No,
it might as well have been.
It might as well have been. You're absolutely right. It was the same feel.
They all look the same.
But the thing is, I was doing the preview, and I had a scene of the car chase, right? And that police car goes outside and he slips right by. I just stopped watching the preview because I didn't want to give it away. Because it was this.
There's
That
a lot
was
of
the
really
story was
great
that good.
scenes though, where De Niro has this expression.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of 50. There's a
God,
lot of.
what am I doing in this movie?
Yeah,
There's
really
a lot
much.
of 55-year-old ass Robert De Niro in this, being
Yeah.
like, "I'm too old for this shit."
I'm about to die. What did I do?
I know.
There's also a lot of bad salt and pepper hair wig from a distance De Niro stuntman in this.
Yeah, there was
the more you watch this in high def, the more it's like,
no,
that absolutely
not
was
quite.
not Rob.
Exactly.
Huh.
But it it had Stellan
Jonathan
Skarsgård in
Pryce
it. He was
ever
a young
played
and he was
much
young
of
and
a
fresh
badass?
back then.
What's that?
Stellan Skarsgård was young and fresh in this, wasn't he?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was his.
And
This
then,
was
and then again, like you've
Oh,
got
great cast down the line.
badass, questionable badass number 1, questionable badass number 2.
You should sit up a tiny little bit, Chris, because it's almost like you fit into that montage.
Yeah. Flip it to black and white, and you're in.
blue and white, but
Yeah,
it's
blue
great.
and white. I don't know if Zoom has that. filter.
Jonathan Pryce is. I just love seeing him and stuff, and
Yeah, me too.
like,
Mhm.
it's amazing that they got somebody from Surrey and somebody who's Welsh to do these
Irish?
North Irish accents for
Oh,
the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
movie.
But that's kind of a common theme in like this kind of film. But that's one thing. And well, there's the Russian oligarch's girlfriend, the skater. It's like, wait, I know her. It's Katerina Witt, of course.
Yeah.
Who was
She was trying to have an acting career. At
Yeah,
this
well,
point.
her name was on the tip of everyone's tongue back in the late '90s, and it was perfect. And she gets killed in the middle of there. That was a great sequence.
This
She
movie has
popped in there, and everyone's like, it really examines it. What said happened during like an ice skating competition? Someone falls dead. You're gonna like 1, 2. Is this part of the act? What's going on? I don't know. Panic, 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 and then it all goes right. It was beautifully timed.
You have the
One of those things that
crying ice clowns.
It's one of those things that you think, okay, they're not going to actually do this in this movie. They're going to threaten to do this in this movie, and then they just fucking do it.
Yes, do it exactly.
So they do they do the sort of Chekhov's murder ahead of that, which is in this scene where he's about to shoot the little girl.
Yeah.
And he's like, I was willing to shoot her, and I don't even know her, and I don't particularly like you, and then the guy pulls the gun on him, and it's like, well, now you're dead. Like, you have also fucked up. Stellan Skarsgård is very, very good in a sort of over the top role in Hunt for Red October. And then he does basically nothing in the US until this.
Right.
And this is really what set him on his trajectory of doing a lot of American movies. Which is great because I love Stellan Skarsgård.
I know he was like the best part of Andor. He just about heart and soul that film. It's good stuff. And but he was again. We saw one of his Swedish films, didn't we? We saw
Insomnia.
My God, he was brilliant in that. But everyone just brought everything they had and it was on the table. It's weird. This film lost money. It didn't actually make its money back.
It had bad. This movie had really bad like advertising. Like they did not advertise this well.
Yeah.
No.
Like,
and I actually think the title
didn't help.
They kind of try to lean into it a little bit with the guy that played Drax in Moonraker.
Yeah, he's making a little samurai model.
I think that's an incredible scene because come on.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's pretty.
Yes,
that's
but
nice setup. Yes,
it's a little heady.
Uh-huh.
A little. They also, in case you didn't get it, put a bunch of title cards up at the beginning.
Yes,
they explain it twice in the movie.
I don't know that the Ronin metaphor, for me anyway, totally clicks with this bunch of people.
Oh, it absolutely does, because the whole intro to the group where you have like, is this guy in the CIA or isn't he? What's this French Gaijin guy doing? What's why do we have an ex-KGB guy here?
That's like every movie like this ever made. That's going back to the Dirty Dozen. That's like basically the trope,
right? But
a bunch of people from different backgrounds together to go do a thing.
But this is end of history time, so none of these people are accepted by their governments anymore. Like, the whole point of this is that there's this whole generation of people who were developed in the the Cold War,
Yeah.
and then were just sent out into the world to die.
Right.
Like they are Ronin. Like,
well, after 91, it was over. But the Cold War was essentially finished for about, for the time being, and they were out kind of independent contractors at that point. They made that they actually spent some time drilling down on that in the first act.
Yeah, I think it's I think it really actually does sell
but
that concept.
To follow Chris's point, though, did it need to go to that, make a comparison to the Ronin thing? It's like I think in terms of like
past the opening title crawl,
the way this went versus like the way the Ghost Dog, the way the Samurai went, two kind of do different things. They were referring to this kind of samurai code thing, or Le Samurai, which we also watched. This was kind of the weakest association of at least these three films I can think of.
I think that there's not a lot of comparisons that you can draw in modern, like in a modern society, to what happened at the end of the Cold War, in terms of like, just, you have all of these people who are trained by these governments to be these violence doers, and then are just released out into society with nothing behind them. This, of course, now has become the way of the world since then. But if you go back to 1998, this wasn't the way it worked.
Right.
Post 9/11, where you have endless war, you have people cycling through, you have private military corporations and all of that stuff, none of whom are attached to any government, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I feel like if you made this movie in 2004, you could do this as they're all veterans of Afghanistan or whatever, who are going to rob a bank or something like that. But like in 1998, it had to be a little more heady, because we didn't have cultural touchstones for just abandoning a large class of state-trained violence operators, Like, this is the one time that happened in sort of in human history. So Ronin is a good
Republican Guard or whatever, the right?
Yeah, like this is just kind of like, Ronin is a good comparison, because that's one of the only times you would have people who are this highly trained, who are this just ambiently available to do random things.
Okay.
I've noticed that the only person of the four of us who had never seen this movie before is suspiciously quiet.
Who, John?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was going to even ask for first position to talk about this until Tad jumped in on it.
I can't wait. I really can't wait. I rubbed my hands together for this one.
I'm kind of glad he did, so I know where I stand a little bit, because I don't stand in the same place. I had such a weird reaction to this movie.
Weird. I like that.
I think I wrote some things down. I enjoyed every minute. I think it's well made. I think there's great performances, particularly Sean Bean, who does so much with a small part. I just thought
his room halfway through the film.
He absolutely did. I mean, he's humiliated by the time he's paid off and sent on his way. He's completely humiliated, and I think it's probably maybe the most interesting part to play in the movie.
Right. There's also a deleted scene where the IRA shows up after everyone else leaves, and he's walking out, and they just grab him and throw him in the back of a van, and it's
they should have left that in.
No, you're fucking done. He does not survive this movie. Also, Jean Reno. Let's not forget Jean Reno.
Jean Reno.
Oh, Jean Reno.
I cannot fault any of the actors in this. They're all at the top of their game, doing such good work. The scene where they take the bullet out of De Niro.
That's really good.
God damn.
Can you stitch me up? Because I think I'm going to pass out.
Yeah, right.
He just passes out. It's just great.
So, and obviously the best car chases. I mean, there are multiple moments in this movie where I was just like,
I know.
Real crashing.
30% of this movie is car chases, and it could have been 80% of this movie, and I still would have been
okay. Chase through the amphitheater. I mean, good God, the guy knows how to shoot action and build suspense and all that stuff. All that said, I would recommend this movie to anyone, but I don't know if this is a good movie. I questioned it after. As soon as it was over, I'm like, this was meaningless. They didn't tell us what was in the case. It doesn't matter. I wondered through the whole thing why it was the Russians and the Irish, well-known international criminals, the Northern Irish, then at the end, it was like, well, what was in the case doesn't matter, but because we killed Jonathan Pryce, now there's peace in Northern Ireland. The end. Oh, and then that really dumb ending at the very end, the last scene in the pub again.
Yeah.
Right.
this
You're
one-
right.
I just,
You know
it
what,
doesn't,
I'm-
it is, this movie is definite, it defines less than the sum of its parts. All the parts are fucking great.
I think that
I'm
I'm
not going to disagree with you, John. I'm 100% behind you.
No,
Man.
but it's no different than Pulp Fiction, which is it's the fucking.
I knew that was going to be the comparison.
But it is. It doesn't
Because you
matter.
don't get to find out what's in the case. And what does it all add up to? I don't know. But in the Pulp Fiction, I love that movie. I think I still love that movie because of the human connections that are made in each sequence. You know, the sort of the way that they come to an understanding, these characters that were
Tad said.
antagonists. What's that?
What Tad said. It's this guy.
Well, yeah. Well, Pulp Fiction
guy
is
is
actually
holding
Samuel L.
together-
Jackson's characters.
This guy is holding together.
It's his
the human
story.
connection angle on this movie.
Yeah.
And
He's holding
he's
together
got
what in
the
this
human
movie?
connection.
Human connection of angle on this movie is being carried by Jean Reno.
The line where De Niro asks him if he's management, and he goes, "If I were management, I wouldn't have offered you a cigarette." Like,
Yeah, it's one of the
there's
best
an
lines.
immediate connection between the two
Yes.
of them at that point,
Yeah.
and it carries through the entire movie. And this scene at the end, the one you don't like, where he's waiting for her to show up back in that bar, and she
Right.
doesn't, and he looks at him and he goes, "She would not come back here." And he's like,
You're
"Yeah,
right.
she would not come back here." And then he's like, "I can't even reach into my pocket to pay the bill." And he's like, "I've got it." And he's like, "I'll get the next one." And
I love
then
that.
they're
I'm
never going to
still-
see each other again. These
I
two
got
are
that.
never
I
going
got that.
I'm
There's
still
just
not-
that voiceover at the end where Jean Reno goes up the stairs and he says, "That must be the third rule." It's like, oh God, mammoth.
Yeah,
I know.
that,
Mammoth.
that
Well, I know.
Damn it.
They mammoted the thing. That's the thing. No, I'm behind John.
But also
100% in this one. The thing
Frankenheimer
is,
did
if I had seen
uncredited-
this in a
Frankenheimer did uncredited rewrites on this too, so that could have been Frankenheimer as well.
Could have been, but
if
it
I'd
did.
seen this, if I had seen this on multiplex back in '98, and I saw it, I would have really enjoyed it. I love the surround sound. The
I
car
did really
chases,
enjoy it.
explosions like that. And by the walking back to the parking lot afterwards, by the time I got in the car, I would have forgotten every single thing about this film, because it's not
should have seen it
it's
when you were
not
15,
emotionally
man.
compelling. It's
Yes.
a thrill ride, and it's about a
Ted said
world
too.
that I don't know much about. So
Yeah.
and I don't care about it because it's kind of not real in a kind of a basic way. And so
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and that's the thing. It's like
There's
yeah,
a
it was
direct,
good.
there-
It was
there's
a good
direct
film, but
through
it
line.
wasn't a great film. It wasn't a memorable film. That's the thing.
I think it's memorable.
It's
But
memorable for the car chases.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And
you know?
and also again, like, just the quality of filmmaking in the car
Yeah.
chases.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
just what's happening. It's like, I don't know if I'd ever seen a movie before this where, like, you have a camera that's focused on the wheel of the car as it's like taking corners and stuff like that.
So
Like,
many scenes
like-
seem to be at ground level going
Yeah.
80.
Right, and
Right,
through
and a
those
lot of this-
narrow
Now,
streets,
hold
which
on.
is
You're,
just
are you really telling me that your date looks pretty for the prom? Really? And it's like
No.
oh, the technique and the cinematography and the stunts are great, and it's like
But
no,
that's the thing that
that's
it is visceral. It's not intellectual
Well,
enjoyment.
yeah,
it's
Thank
visceral.
you, John. That's
I look at
exactly what
now.
we're looking for.
that's okay.
Yeah.
If a
It is
movie
okay. There's
makes
nothing
you
wrong. There is
if a
nothing
movie
wrong
makes
with
you
that.
Feel excited.
Yeah.
That's okay.
No.
Yeah, and
There-
I agree. 15 would be the perfect age.
Yeah.
there is something about this movie.
This is
though.
his Star Wars.
Yes.
Look at that.
This movie is the last gasp of a type of car chase gritty film that doesn't get made now. Like, as much, Scott, you just watched
It is a throwback. It is, and the music, which is maybe the worst thing in the movie, also feels like a throwback.
As you're saying, Chris.
Scott, you just watch Ambulance. I think about Six Underground. I think about a lot of movies. that
Oh,
have
ambulance is nuts.
there's something about nowadays with the
Mhm.
drones and the CG and cameras, which are basically disposable.
Mhm.
But go get another GoPro out of the box, it'll get taken out in this shot. It doesn't matter.
Oh, dude. Oh, okay.
you couldn't do that.
Okay. There's this film which has people running out of the way of cars going full
Yes.
speed. It's nuts.
They're not going.
Terrifying.
Then
They don't
10
make
years
this-
later
they
they
don't
leave.
have to make this anymore. You don't
No.
have to destroy 80 real cars and close streets and any of that shit because you can fake it.
No, 10
Right.
years later they did Live
Like
Free or Die
fire.
Hard. Remember that one? It's 2007.
Which
There's
one?
a bit in a ton.
Live Free or Die Hard.
Live Free or
yeah.
Die Hard. There's a bit where Justin Long and Bruce Willis are ducking, and there's this car flying through the air, and it hits these two other cars and smashes off of them and goes past, and you're like, it looks thrilling, but you know it's fake.
That's one of the
green
things
screen.
that I really appreciate about some of the Fast and Furious movies is they have absolutely destroyed 80 cars in some of those movies.
Exactly.
Like they absolutely like if you go to Fast and Furious 5 and you watch the fucking them dragging the safe down the
That's
street,
the best one.
and it's like ping ponging off of stuff and
Prove me
knocking
wrong.
cars.
That is the best. That is the best one.
Oh, dude,
I think the one where they go to space
but
is the
thing
best
is, I
one.
qualify that. You can qualify it's a mad world for the same reason. There's like gigantic old Plymouth Furies and like Cadillacs bouncing off each other at full speed, people jumping out of the way.
This is the version of Grandpa misses his Victrola. I totally get it. There's something about, again, like I look at this movie objectively and go, this is, I think, one of the last gasps of this kind of movie.
Right.
They made a lot of it in the 70s and in the 80s, and this is like the last one of the tail end of the 90s, and now it's all fucking CG and green screen. And
the reason I bring
No, I'm gonna applaud that. That is exactly right. This is
the reason I bring up the technique and where the cameras are and the stunts and stuff like that is because what they've done is they've taken that and they've brought it to another level. Like they've elevated that form of filmmaking with the availability of better technology.
You're right.
Like
you get you know, people say Bullet, they say French Connection, same director, but now this, because they have, you know, they've taken all that and then they've applied the latest technology to it, and I think this is the best car chase I've ever. These two car chases are probably the best.
This is actually a better car chase than the one in Bullet, because Bullet is
absolutely,
because Bullet has actually got this.
Go watch that now. You'll see.
Bullet was the best at its time, but I think
it has the thing is Bullet has as an attractive thing because it's in San Francisco. Where like people talk about it outside of this Bay Area, they're like, oh, great car chase and San Francisco. Woo!
Yes.
You know,
now great car chase and Nice.
Yeah,
great car chase and Paris.
Well, thing is, the element of narrow streets, tunnels, that crazy fucking bullshit. I mean, wow.
There's a Friedkin movie called To Live and Die in L.A. that's also the wrong way down a freeway, but
which you cannot find anywhere.
No, it's
have
missing.
The Blu-ray, but I watched it a year ago. It looks like they're going 30 miles an hour. They're going 80.
Right.
Yeah.
So
although I make an argument,
they're going 30 miles an hour, and they have undercranked it, and they're overcranking it to make it look like it's 80 miles an hour. And Frankenheimer is such a good director that he knows how to film it in a specific way that it does feel like it's 80 miles an hour.
No, he's doing
I was reading up on it actually, and they said they didn't undercrank very much in this movie.
No, the thing is, they did
says
a thing
specifically
you
on
can tell
the
some places where they had the
director's
extras walk extra slow. So, and the cars go by and they do that kind of, that's a neat trick. And
it's not all the time. There's plenty of times where they are going full speed, but especially when they're going the wrong way.
It's suicidal, man.
That's all 30 miles an hour undercranked with
stunt very
drivers
effective
all over the place.
Well, so
it works.
Before we get to the end, what do you
does.
think was in that, in the case?
It doesn't matter.
I know it doesn't matter, but what do you think?
The tape from Escape from New York that they need to play at the conference in Geneva.
Or it's like a copy of The Day the Clown Cried, maybe. You know, that have to
fucking matter. It's the same.
It's the original recipe for Guinness. That's
that would start international.
That makes sense.
The original recipe for Guinness.
It's Marcellus Wallace's soul.
Exactly.
Hey, they could have moved. This could be the same universe. Just move it over to a different movie, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's been in a box. It's been in a box for a long time.
Instead of being in a Zero Halliburton briefcase, it's now in a case for ice skates.
Ice skates.
Yeah. It's bigger. It's more roomy. That the soul's more comfortable now.
It's grown a little.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, while we're talking about little dumb moments, when they're in the garage, the guys they're working on the car, or whatever, in the garage, talking to that guy, and then they turn around and see the big, conveniently located billboard for the ice skating show, and it's like, oh well, that's really convenient that it's right there. And then there's this really funny shot where Jean Reno and De Niro look at each other. Do you know the shot?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's pretty outrageous.
It's just bad, man.
I want to point out one other thing about this movie, and it's something that Frankenheimer himself points out on the commentary, which is it's extremely difficult to do cuts between short periods of time. And this movie does a very, very good job of doing cuts between like 15 minutes. It's been 15 minutes since what's the color of the boathouse at Hereford, and they're like bringing the stuff down and loading it into the van and stuff like that. It's been 15 minutes since De Niro was looking at all the pictures and was like, we need to go out there, and so they get there and then they're ordering, and 15 minutes goes by before they come back down, so they've added more to the tree behind them. Like this movie does such a good job of time continuity between cuts.
That's a good point. That is a hard thing. That is a hard thing to kind of communicate to the audience.
Actually, you're communicating scene transitions in one single cut without using an establishing shot. Hard to do.
Yeah,
he's a master of what he does.
And again,
he did the same thing in Seconds. If you know that, know that
he's
film,
a master. Like he was an absolute master. And like
Black Sunday.
If he wasn't dead.
Shit.
If he wasn't dead, I would be like, you need to remake this with more car chases.
Oh God, I don't think you can cram one more car chase in there. Maybe like a bicycle chase. You can put it somewhere in the middle.
3 more car chases.
All right. Well, golly, let's.
Black Sunday is free on Prime.
All right. Let's do a show of thumbs here, I suppose.
Despite its flaws,
it was. Yeah, it was fun to watch, but not memorable. So it's kind of like doing John.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of the way Tad was last week with Cha Cha Real Smooth.
Yeah, okay.
For a totally different reason.
Yeah.